Good evening. Welcome to the January 24th, 2022 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. This time I will call the meeting to order, and I'll ask you all to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up on the agenda tonight, we have the consent docket. Councilors, questions, comments, or a motion on the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, the consent docket is approved. Next up is public comment on items not scheduled for public hearings. I do have several folks signed up on different items tonight. I also want to mention that one of the items that is on the agenda for public hearing, item 6B, we have a memo that the applicant has requested to postpone that to March 7th. And so we won't have a public hearing on that item tonight, but if you are here to speak, you can speak under section 4 here. And so I'll call those folks up if you'd like to make public comment at this point in the agenda. But first up, we have Joe Weaver. Just a reminder, please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to comment on your agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Good to be here with you. I wanted to speak to two items. My name is Joe Weaver, as you said. I live at 3023 West Shiloh Creek Avenue. I'm very pleased to be on our Daily Bread board. They do great work, and I know they're here on your agenda to speak to the contract work that they've been doing with you. The board was very pleased to support that, and I know they're going to make a great report to you, as well as hopefully some of the other activities we're doing with our Daily Bread. But the main reason why I'm here today is to inform you, I know you probably already know, that the university got approval from our Board of Regents last Friday to enter into the American Airlines deal with the city. The support was unanimous. One of the comments I got from one of the board members afterwards was that's a no-brainer. We have to maintain this service for Stillwater, so we're very pleased to provide that support and to help the city make sure we can have that service to Stillwater. We get the economic development, and we also, I hope people realize this is a very tangible way that the university is supporting Stillwater, not just saying it, but putting money on the table to do it for a common good. So that's really all I have to add.
Thank you, Joe.
You bet.
We appreciate your work on both of those items. Next up, I have Scott Petty.
Hi, everyone. Donald Scott Petty. I live at 5821 Trenton Avenue in Stillwater. I just wanted to state my support of the Husband Street Bicycle Corridor, and thought that I would have that opportunity after the presentation was made. So I've said my piece, and I appreciate your service to our community.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you being here. Next up, I have Stephen Trompler. He was here on the public meeting item, so he may not be speaking. Next, I have Betsy Showalter. Betsy here?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Betsy Showalter. I live at 2402 West 8th Avenue, and I came mainly just to kind of take care of my group that is trying to mount a campaign against the item that's being postponed until March 7th. I just came to kind of look out for our interests and make sure that what we had been told is actually what's going to happen. So it will be postponed until March 7th. Okay. And
yes, we'll vote on that item in a couple of minutes, but
okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. So we will move forward to item 6, public hearings. 6A is a hearing to determine whether a structure located at 2420 East 12th Avenue in Stillwater is dilapidated and abandoned as defined in 11 OS Section 112C and 112.4E. Ms. Childs.
Yes, Mayor. I did have an opportunity to visit with Ms. Combs just prior to the meeting, and she actually reached out to the code enforcement officer as well. She is in the process of interviewing realtors and has actually already obtained 2 quotes. I requested that I asked her how much time she would need. I would request that you pass both this and the resolution to April the 11th. I'm sorry, I'm glad I checked, April the 18th.
April the 18th.
Right.
Councilors, questions? Is there a motion?
Do we just need a motion to defer this item to April 18th?
Yes, please, if you would table it, that would be great.
Motion to table item 6A to the April 18th meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table item 6A to April 18th. Please vote. With a vote of 4 to 0, that item is tabled. All right, item 6B is to receive public comment regarding a request for 802 Southwestern, 2302 West 8th and 2324 West 8th to rezone from small lot single family to office. Mr. Moore?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Brady Moore, Chief Performance Innovation Officer. On Friday, we received a letter from the applicant requesting that this map amendment be postponed to the March 7th City Council meeting. And I'm here with any questions that you have, and I have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Councilors, any questions? We just need a motion to postpone it to the March 7th. Is there a motion to that effect?
Postpone this item until March 7th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to postpone item 6A to the March 7th meeting. Please vote. With a vote of 4 to 0, that item is postponed to March 7th. Just move through this whole agenda and just set something somewhere else. We'll get out of here quick. Not this next item, no. I'm excited for this one.
Yep.
Item 7A is receive an overview from Our Daily Bread on the completed Utility Assistance Program Partnership. Kicking us off is Becky Taylor.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Becky Taylor, Chief Civic Innovation Officer. In December 2020, the City of Stillwater launched this Phase 1 of the Stillwater Resident COVID Impact Assistance Program, and this was in partnership with Our Daily Bread Food and Resource Center. In this first phase, just to remind everyone of this program, we utilized $150,000 of CARES funding for Stillwater residents who needed help with utility and or rent assistance due to a negative financial impact from COVID. When the funds ran out, city staff applied and received a CDBG CV grant totaling $490,000 to fund Phase 2 of the same program. Rachel Conley, the Executive Director of Our Daily Bread, and Callie Barnes, Grant Coordinator at Our Daily Bread, are here this evening to talk about Phase 2 and how it went. And I think you'll find their presentation very interesting and great. But I wanted first to take this opportunity to thank Council for allocating these resources, to thank City staff for all of their extra time put on this program, but especially to thank the staff, board, and volunteers at Our Daily Bread, who I know went above and beyond to make sure that this was a successful program for our residents. Partnerships like this one are invaluable, and we are very grateful for community partners like Our Daily Bread. So Rachel and Callie?
Hi, I'm Rachel Conley. I'm the Executive Director of Our Daily Bread. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. We love good news, and so this is a good time to spread that. I'm going to start for just a couple of minutes and tell you guys some things we have going on at Our Daily Bread. First of all, just for some people that may be here or listening that aren't familiar with what we do, our mission is feeding our community collaboratively and providing connections that enable lasting change. I'm so passionate about this, especially the connections part, and that's part of what this grant I feel like really helped members of our community do. people that couldn't get back on their feet or back ahead were able to catch up because of the connections you provided and what you allowed us to do. What we do at Our Daily Bread on 12th Street by Couch Park, we offer guest choice grocery shopping for Payne County residents, where people can come once a month to get groceries for their family. Based on household size, each guest receives selections from each category on our shopping floor. So it's set up like a grocery store, which is really important to us to not only provide guest dignity, but also to reduce waste. One thing that we, were concerned about through COVID, obviously we didn't have a choice but to do outside distribution, packing boxes for people, but how much of that, maybe went to waste because of things like food allergies or intolerances or, kids' preferences or things like that. So people coming in to shop not only allows us to provide connections with them, but also allows them to choose their own groceries. The first and third Friday of every month, we've started a program called Freebie Friday. Most Saturdays of the month, we don't have a shopping session, so we set out our surplus items we have in a farmer's market style, and anyone from our community is welcome to come select what they can use in their homes, and that reduces waste greatly for us, and it also allows us another opportunity to make connections with guests in our community. Each Wednesday through 2021 and already in 2022, we do our mobile market where we take food on the road and we go serve different communities who may not have easy access to food, or they may have transportation issues getting to us on 12th Street. So we currently visit Yale, the OSU Family Resource Center, Glencoe, Ripley, and Cushing. Those of you that know me know I have many words, and I won't take them. You probably should have put that 3-minute thing up with me. But in case you haven't been lately, as COVID protocols kind of decreased a little bit through last spring, pre-Delta, mind you, partnerships that Becky had started long before I arrived started contacting me again. Hey, we were talking about. Hey, can we try again too? And thankfully, she had implemented a staff before she left who was ready to hit the ground running in April. And then in August, when we went full indoor shopping, we made a lot of these connections. We're able to put a lot of these services in place for our guests. So I'll let you read on your own, but if you want to talk about any of this stuff, I'm your girl. I'm so proud of our community partners and just what they can bring to our guests. It's so much fun. Just some of our serving numbers in 2021, just as a highlight, we were able to serve 11,293 households, which represented 26,646 individuals, 2,862 additional individuals at Mobile Market, 158 guests through Shield on Wheels, which is a partnership with the Salvation Army for people who are homebound and can't come to Our Daily Bread to get groceries. 6,537 guests over 60 with our Senior Servings Meal Program. Again, call me. I'll tell you all about it. It's so great. And 82 haircuts in our salon. So, without further ado and delay, I'd like to introduce you to Callie Barnes. Sarah Murray is an outstanding Stillwater resident who was hired as grant coordinator when we started this grant project. And when we found out about the Afghan refugees who were going to be moving to Stillwater, Catholic Charities offered her a job. I'm not mad. So she is doing great work for them, and I appreciate her so much. And Abby Woods was our grant assistant the entire time, an excellent young lady who's a freshman at OSU and just has a heart for our guests and the people of our community that we serve. Thankfully, Callie had sent me her resume. She is a finance major with a nonprofit minor, and the dots connected, and she was able to take over the project mid-run, which is not an easy thing to do, and she brought it to fruition. So, excellent individual. I'm so proud of her, and I'm thankful that she's doing the rest of this program. So.
Okay, so I'm just going to run you through some of the data we collected from the grant. When we started, we received $490,000 with guidelines that 6% of that would go towards administrative costs. So the original budget was $460,000 to rent and utility assistance and about $29,000 to administrative. In November, we realized that we wouldn't be using all of our administrative costs, so with the help from Becky, we were able to add about $4,000 more into rent and utility assistance. We opened the application on June 20th and closed it on November 9th. Our first week, we received 44 applications, and by the end, we had received 476. 56 of those were duplicates, so someone had applied twice or something like that. So we had, in total, about 420. 288 of those applications were approved, so including their family members, that totaled 811 people. The average assistance was about $1,600, the largest being $9,000 and the smallest being $86. The largest sum was given out to a family of 7, where the mother and the oldest daughter were the primary providers for their house. Because of COVID, the daughter lost her job and the mother's hours were cut to part-time. So getting that $9,000 helped them to recover from where they had been and move forward successfully. The average household size was about 3 people, but we had quite a few larger households, so 5 of 7, 14 of 6, 20 of 5. There were 623 bills paid total, so 226 of those were rent, 326 were City of Stillwater, and 71 were O&G. The majority of the bills paid were City of Stillwater, but because rent payments are higher, a lot of that money did end up going toward rent. We did have to deny quite a few of the applications, but the main reason was because of no response from the applicants. So something like when they submitted their application, they didn't give us proof of income, and we tried to contact them 3 times and never heard back. Another thing we ran into was that Our Daily Bread serves all of Payne County, and this grant only served the City of Stillwater. So some of our guests would hear about the grant and apply, but we weren't able to assist them because they were outside of city limits. Something we asked in the application was their education level. So the majority of applicants had graduated high school or gotten their GED, but there were actually about 50 who had never even completed high school. And then there were some who did go through college. Another thing we asked was employment, and there were about 80 people who were unemployed, but that coincides with their COVID reason, was that because they had lost their job due to COVID. And then the majority were employed, whether part-time, full-time, or self-employed. We also had some who had alternate income, so about 28 on Social Security and 27 receiving disability. These are just a few of the quotes that we received from applicants, and I was going to share with you the story of the last person we were able to help. We had originally denied her because we were out of funds, but since we were able to reallocate that $4,000, we called her back, and when she came in to complete her notary papers, she came with a 1-month-old baby, and she had 3 more kids at home. She had lost her job because of COVID and had trouble getting a new job because school shut down, so her kids were at home. And then on top of all of that, she was a victim of domestic violence. So getting this money helped her to move forward successfully and create a better future for her kids. Special thank you to Dana, Cindy, Becky, Michelle, and Christian at the city, and then also Jim McCollum. He is a steadfast volunteer who helped us each week with notary. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for being here, and thank you for presenting the data on the program. It's always good to see what's actually happening once we make a decision and are able to put that out there. And so the work of Our Daily Bread on this project alone has made such a tremendous impact on our community, and the city would not have been able to do that without a partnership with Our Daily Bread. And so it's incredibly valuable, and we thank you all so much, everyone on your team and your board, for making this project possible and for helping these people. Thank you.
Mayor, just, and you know this because you received the email, but there is additional funding available for this same project. We have sent in a letter of intent after making sure that OBD had the bandwidth to continue, and if we're successful in receiving another $250,000, that will begin again this fall.
Great.
That's excellent. That's excellent, yeah, because I did see there were a few people who we did run out of money before we were able to help them, and so if we can get some more cash into that program, it will be great to be able to go back and finish that up. Counselors, any comments?
I would just say thank you so much. I remember that this had some extra hoops to jump through and documentation that had to be attended to, and so thank you so much for everybody at Our Daily Bread, and thank you for the city manager's office, because there were also additional hoops to jump through to get the grant to begin with. So thanks to everybody that put in that extra time and effort.
Absolutely. All right. That takes us to item 7B on the agenda, which is approve an air service agreement with American Airlines, providing for a minimum revenue guarantee. I will let Paul Priegel explain the item to us.
Good evening, Paul Priegel, Airport Director. And tonight I bring before you for your consideration an air service agreement between the City of Stillwater and American Airlines. Just a little history. American Airlines began air service at Stillwater Regional Airport in August of 2016. And since that time has offered multiple daily flights to and from Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. We have had well over 225,000 people fly in and out of our airport since the beginning of service. And our service area not only covers Stillwater proper, but a catchment area that goes west towards Enid, up towards the Kansas border to the north, east over to Tulsa, and south down to the north side of Edmond. In total, about 190,000 population. So our air service up until the beginning of COVID in March of 20 was thriving, to say the least. We had substantial growth. We're in the process of getting bigger aircraft and more frequency. And then, of course, COVID has hit. And so we have continued to work with American Airlines over the last couple of years. Our industry is rebounding, but obviously slower. And then, of course, we keep getting the repetitive impacts of more variants. Just another kind of side thing with our air service that some might not realize is, in addition to just the connectivity, which, going into DFW is one of the country's largest hubs, connects our community to pretty much anywhere in the country or the world, actually. But it also has resulted in a substantial investment back into our airport from the federal government through infrastructure and airport improvement dollars. And so every year, because once we reach 10,000 employments, which we reached even in 2020, which one of our lowest years, we get $1 million back to the airport that we can invest in infrastructure improvements. We've also received millions of dollars in grants. We've received millions of dollars in COVID relief because of our status as a commercial airport in the state of Oklahoma. The air service agreement that we bring before you is almost identical in wording as what we've had in the past when we were starting service with American Airlines. The reason that we've now had to come back to it is there's two major issues going on in the airline industry. The first one is just the overall increase in overhead. I think anybody that operates a business now can attest that the supply chain and all of that, limited and increased substantially. Cost of fuel has gone up. So just to operate is substantially higher. The bigger issue is the pilot shortage. And this pilot shortage was coming anyways, and then COVID just magnified that because there was a lot of pilots that went ahead and cashed out retirement, and now the airlines are having to make a very tough decision to take a regional pilot that would be trained to fly a 50-seat jet and moving them up to a big jet in the main line that flies 150, 160 or larger jet. Obviously, that makes business sense to reallocate that, but they're also having to come back and say, what regional markets do we need to cut? Because of our relationship with American Airlines throughout COVID particularly, their relationship with Oklahoma State University, instead of calling us and saying we're pulling service, they called and said we really don't want to pull service, but we're going to have to if we are not able to enter into some sort of an agreement. So a couple of months ago, we began talking with them about an air service agreement. We have worked with Oklahoma State University, and you heard Vice President Weaver earlier discuss that Friday the Regents have unanimously approved a memorandum of understanding that would basically provide financial support up to 50% of what the City of Stillwater's obligation is, which is substantial support. Due to the fact that that just went to the Regents on Friday, we'll bring that MOU back before council at a future date for approval. The air service agreement we bring before you tonight is for 2 years. It is the substantial part of the air service agreement is called a minimum revenue guarantee. We don't simply write the airlines a check and say fly. They actually will run their routes. They look at the performance, and then they invoice us for any revenue shortfall. The revenue is capped. It's actually divided because of the midstream that we got this, obviously middle of our fiscal year. The first term is January 1st of 22 to June 30th of 22 with a maximum commitment of $1 million. The second term is June 2nd of 22 to July 1st of 22 to June 30th of 23 for a maximum commitment of $2 million. And then the final segment is July 1 of 23 to December 31st of 23 for a maximum commitment of $1 million. And again, the city's commitment would be half of that because of OSU's partnership. Tonight, we bring before you the air service agreement, which is for the 2-year air service agreement. I will add one thing on this as well. One of the most important things that I see about what this brings is stability back to our market that we have not had since the beginning of COVID. We saw in late 20 when American called and said, we're pulling out, we're done. And our community rallied, we were able to save our service. To be quite honest, I've been expecting a phone call every month for that time. So to be able to have an agreement that says we are going to have service for 2 years is substantial, particularly in COVID times. So being able to implement this gives us confidence, gives our community confidence that when they book a ticket later in the summer, we're still going to have flights to bring them. So with this, we've got the air service agreement, and then we also have a budget amendment that would fund the first section of this, which is the January 1st to June 30th, 2022 for $1 million. The next 2 sections, the $2 million for next fiscal year and the $1 million for the partial fiscal year in 23 will be brought before council using the normal budgetary process. I know I've put out a lot, and I've got a lot more I can say about it, but I would open up the council for questions before I make a recommendation.
Thank you, Paul. Councilors, questions?
I would just comment that I think the American Airlines one is such a game changer for the city and the university, but it's also such an outstanding example of the strong collaborative relationship between OSU and the city of Stillwater, and something that without both entities probably would have never been accomplished. So just a compliment to the city and to the university for their continued commitment to this.
Absolutely.
And I'm just tickled that they're not pulling out, that
Me too.
that they're willing to do an agreement, and that just goes to show that a community like ours really is servicing and providing a service for not just the people in our community, but the surrounding areas. And so that's very impactful and important. So.
Paul, are we seeing in other local markets these similar type agreements, or is it?
I think so. The problem with these all, when they start entering into discussions with the cities, they keep them all pretty confidential. So
Sure.
they're not usually advertised until they go through a council or and hit. So their tone indicated that it was becoming more and more common. I just don't know what cities are seeing.
And you mentioned that this is somewhat in keeping with the numbers that we were looking at the beginning of our air service.
As far as
For Stillwater, did you say that was there also this minimum revenue guarantee at the time we started our air service?
Yes. The minimum revenue guarantee is how we started when obviously to give our community a chance. And typically, again, as we were getting into March of 20, we were working our way out of it, had really established our own 2 feet, and we're doing fine. And then with COVID, to be quite honest, I'm very surprised they haven't come earlier with this type of request, just because I know across the board, particularly the regional markets are hitting really hard.
Certainly seems like it's just an opportunity kind of rebalance with the airline industry being in such flux right now, and a great opportunity for us to continue air service here locally.
And it's been a huge investment, not only locally, but again, from the federal government. And then, we've got a new terminal straight ahead as well in the next couple of years that obviously if this went away, then that would go away as well. And so there's just a lot more to come. We know that brighter days are ahead. If you look at the trend from 2021 into 22, even though we're still doing the wobble, we're in a general direction still moving upwards. So it'll take a while for our industry to recover, but we are slowly seeing recovery.
Paul, were we done with the MRG before COVID?
We were, so the MRG was supposed to exit August of 20, and COVID hit March of 20. And so up until March, we were actually projected to have extra money left over because we were performing so well.
Yeah, we weren't going to have to spend it all because the
and
numbers
then we
were...
actually, and just to kind of give you an indication of how this works, we actually ran out of our MRG money in June of 20, but these MRGs cap our commitment. So just rough numbers, it cost about $6 million a year to operate the 2 round-trip flights for American Airlines. They're asking us to commit $2 million in revenue guarantee. If they completely, like when we ran out of money in June of 20, they continued flying and we weren't obligated over what our cap was. And so I don't remember the final hit they took, but I want to say it was like $500,000 or $600,000 before the end, because at that point nobody was flying. And so we were, when I was standing in June or January of 20, we were looking at August going, we're going to have some money left over in the MRG. And then of course COVID hit, and we ended up having to go through it all. But they continued, they honored their commitment. They've been great partners, very responsive to our needs and needs of the community.
As part of the service agreement deals with the schedule.
Yes.
And that was an issue that we've talked about because we did have some concerns
Yes.
a couple years ago when the flight schedule changed.
And in this agreement, the schedule that they have proposed, and I will preface this with saying that, we do realize we're that small speck in the great big network, but the schedule they have proposed is maintaining our 6:20 a.m. flight that is so coveted, particularly in our business travelers. We'll have a 2 o'clock arrival, which we call the midday turn. It comes in about 2 o'clock and goes back out at 2:30. And then we will have somewhere around a 10 o'clock arrival at night. And currently, that's our current schedule, minus right now we have almost a midnight arrival. So we're hoping to see that last flight get moved back up to that 10 o'clock time bank.
Good, that's important.
Yes.
That early flight out is
Critical.
incredibly important, so
Yes.
I'm glad that we're...
It allows a lot of connectivity.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that you kind of highlighted the fact that, while this kind of looks like an expense, it's really an investment, and it's an investment that's paid off for the city of Stillwater in a lot of ways since we started service back in 2016. And those federal funds that come back to the airport, that come back to the service, more than pay for what we've invested in the service itself. And so it's helpful to be able to look at it in terms of, this is not just money that's going out, it's money that we're investing in a service that is bringing money, and not to mention the economic development, the sort of just amenity for our residents to be able to use this service. It's paid us back in a tremendous way over the last several years, and so it makes it a little bit more palatable to say we can put this back on the table. I would also say that in the discussions with American, at least the ones that I was a part of, the indication is that the idea is not to do this forever, right? We are not going to be paying a minimum revenue guarantee until some undefined date, right? We're setting a limit here.
Yeah.
So that's I think an important thing to remember.
Good point.
Counselors, further questions or comments for Paul? Paul, what is your recommendation for us?
It would be a motion to approve the air service agreement with American Airlines and also the associated budget amendment appropriating $1 million for revenue shortfall for the first period ending June 30th of 2022.
Thank you, Paul. Counselors?
Motion to approve staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the item. Please vote. The vote of 4 to 0, the item is approved. Thank you, Paul. Item 7C, consider approval of a conceptual Husband Street bike corridor. Mr. Carnes.
Good evening, councilors or commissioners. Back in the fall of 18, you approved several projects. One was the Husband Bike Corridor project. We started that reviewing with the Citizens Committee. When COVID hit, that's one of the projects that was put on pause until we knew what the budget situation was going to be. We went back when it was reestablished. We went back and got the advisory group together and some stakeholders. They have done some great work in going through the plan, making some suggestions. Russell Beatty with Olson and Associates is here tonight to give you the presentation. I would ask you to make particular attention to a couple of items. One is the methods for where we want to cross some major streets instead of the two-can solution that we talked about before, a light up, maybe a rectangular flashing beacon. The other is an alternate route between McElroy and Boomer Road along Husband. We have some concerns about the amount of traffic between McElroy and Boomer Road. We'd like to shift that over to Duncan. That would require us to go through the church's property there. They are in support of the project, and we would work with them to do the route and obtain an easement from them. So at that point, unless you have any questions for me, I'll turn it over to Russell. Should be that. Perfect.
Good evening. It's good to be here this evening to talk about this project. So this is a low-stress bike corridor. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, it'll show up here on the screen, a little bit about what that means and then talk about the presentation as well. So really a low-stress bike corridor, what we're really after is providing a safe route that people will feel safe when they're taking their kids on a bike, peds, for this corridor, really from the area of Boomer, just south of the high school, downtown to just south of 6th Street. Really providing an area that people will feel safe to be on bikes, walk through an area. And so that's really what we're looking at. We're trying to find a low-stress area for those. So some of the ways that we achieve some of these things is we'll go through, we can divert traffic off of the roadway. There are intersection improvements that we can make, encourage more people to walk along the streets to increase the amount of people in the area. Some of the other things we're going to talk about a bridge over West Boomer Creek, and revising some stop signs. So there's several different things, and so that we can do to help encourage a lower stress. So specifically on this stretch, we looked at several different areas. I'll talk about some of the different methods here in just a second. But as you look here, here's a legend, and you look at, basically we really looked at a lot of the intersections. And so as you can see, the pavement marking options really is a predominant theme of a lot of things that we're looking at on this corridor, really looking at pavement markings. A couple of areas, we're looking at a possible traffic circle there at 3rd and at Miller. And then, as Monty mentioned, looking at some options of a toucan signal option or a rectangular rapid flashing beacon that will alert drivers to there's pedestrians in the intersection. So some of the things, these are some of the options that we looked at as we were doing this study. The pavement markings, just look at pavement markings across an intersection. We looked at possible traffic circles. Just makes drivers aware that there's something different here, and just making them more aware as they travel through the area. One of the things that we also looked at was a traffic diverter. This would essentially kind of reduce or eliminate some of the direction of travel along Husband. Based upon a lot of our feedback from stakeholders and the committee, this was something we elected to not put in part of the study. So that was something we did look at as an option, but for this situation, we felt like it was not necessary for this. The toucan signal, interesting things about the toucan signal, it is really for pedestrians and bikes only. So as they pull up, they'll hit the activator. The signal will, you'll get a light. It'll stop the cross traffic and allow the pedestrians and the bikes to cross, and then everything goes back to normal. So that's a toucan signal. The rapidly flashing beacons with the signal arms, we're using this really in place of a toucan signal in some areas. This is a signal arm that goes all the way across the roadway, really to highlight that this is a crossing, these are pedestrians, these would be warning lights to let people know that there are people that are wanting to cross at this location to warn the drivers. We also looked at raised intersections as a possibility. We also looked at some regular rapid flashing beacons which don't have the arm going across the road, more what you'll see a lot of in lower volume traffic areas. So really starting from the south and working north, looking there at 6th Street, I know there's some additional studies that are going on at 6th Street specifically, but at 6th Street really we're looking at some striping. With the striping at the intersection and what we refer to as sharrows in the lane that that are marked on the roadway that basically say this is a bike and a car route, and so that's what we'd be seeing through the intersection and along Husband. Going further to the north, additional pavement markings. We'd be looking at providing stop signs along 5th Avenue and along 4th Avenue to stopping the traffic, allowing a flow of traffic for the bikes and pedestrians along Husband between on 5th or on 4th and 5th. At 3rd, we're looking at a traffic circle at 3rd Avenue, and this would be an area that I know there's quite a bit of traffic in this area that use a lot of east-west cut-through traffic, kind of getting from one side to the other. Traffic circle, mainly just to kind of give awareness to that Husband Street is a shared corridor with bikes and with peds. At Husband, at Maple, once again, we're looking at some striping along Maple. This is where there's a jog. This is where the correction is along Husband. So there's actually a jog that goes, from south goes west, then go back north. Looking at stop signs along Maple itself, but really, once again, really trying to make sure provide a lot of paving markers. Make sure there's a lot of awareness for the drivers in the area so that they can see that this is, once again, a shared facility. One of the things that we did look like on Husband, as you can see, there's a median on the south, going south on Husband as you're approaching Maple. We are recommending that to be a right turn only for the vehicles. Really, the purpose of doing that is we really are trying to discourage a lot of the through traffic, vehicle traffic on Husband. And so there's certain areas we're looking at to try to discourage just a constant flow of traffic from north to south along Husband. So this is one area that we do have a restriction at this. Throughout the whole corridor, this is one of those areas. So look at Elm Avenue. Once again, we're looking at paving striping on Elm with stop signs at Elm with the striping for the intersection going forward. At Miller, once again, we ended up with a traffic circle very similar to 3rd to just raise awareness. As we get to Hall of Fame, we've got a couple of different alternates here at Hall of Fame. So alternate 1, what we're looking at is a traditional toucan signal. The way this would operate is the bike would pull up to the intersection and be able to activate the button. There would be signals along Hall of Fame that would stop the traffic. The signal would be coordinated with the rest of the signals along Hall of Fame as well, and so that those would work together. But this would provide access and a safe passage for the bikes or peds to cross Hall of Fame for those individuals. So this is the first option, alternate. The other alternate we looked at was the rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So in this case, the traffic itself, there would not be a signalized crossing, would not be a signalized stop, but if there is a pedestrian or a bike that came up to that intersection, they would activate the flashing lights. The flashing lights would be flashing over Hall of Fame to let the drivers know, hey, someone's wanting to cross here. And then they would be able to then cross, provided they find the gap and people are stopping. They would still be needing to watch for traffic as well.
Do you take questions now, or should I wait until you finish?
No, feel free.
This intersection was the one that I was most concerned about, and I know that there were stakeholders that were also concerned about this intersection and the safety of it. Was there a preference to alternate 1 or alternate 2, or was there discussion on which one they felt was a more suitable?
That is a great question. From some of the stakeholder comments that we've had at this location, there was some concerns about limiting the left turn along Husband onto Hall of Fame. And so there was some concern voiced on that specific route being removed. But what I'd also say at the same time, there are also concerns about still having a safe, low-stress bike corridor of having individuals having to cross Hall of Fame without a protected light.
Right.
And so there was a lot of really good discussion on either one. And so that's why we have 2 different alternates to kind of look at this specific intersection.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to jump in there, on alternate 1, that does restrict left-hand turns off of northbound Husband and southbound Husband?
Yes, it does.
But the alternate 2 doesn't?
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
So then, moving north from Hall of Fame, there's the bridge over West Broomer Creek that we know needs some work on the bridge. We're recommending to remove the bridge and replace it with a bicycle pedestrian bridge, so that any movement that would go across there would be limited. It would not have vehicle traffic. It would only be for bike and a ped. This once again would lends to the low stress by making this corridor so you're not going to be able to drive from north to south or south to north just straight through like we do now. And so this is another location that would help remove some of the traffic off Husband without eliminating traffic off Husband. And so we're recommending replacing this bridge with a bike or ped bridge that no cars would be on.
Where would the cars go?
Cars would, if they would find, there would be other routes they could go around. I mean, the other streets adjacent are still open. They just would not, you would not be able to go from Husband south across that area through that section.
Okay, so I mean, if you turned north off of Hall of Fame onto Husband, you'd have, it's like a block there, right, before that bridge?
Yes.
And is there there's a street that you could turn left or right on before you get to the bridge?
Yeah, I believe the street, I would want a map just to verify, but there is a street just to the south of where that bridge is, and there's also a street just to the north of where the bridge is. So it would not be a cul-de-sac situation that there would be a dead end. So moving north to McElroy is another area that there's a lot of traffic, and we had a lot of discussion with the stakeholders at this location. So alternate 1, what we're looking at was the rectangular flashing beacons with signal arms. So once again, they would be able to activate that, have flashers on the arms to make people on McElroy aware that there are people going to be crossing at this location. The alternate 2 at that location was a toucan signal that we discussed a little bit there at Hall of Fame. This was the toucan signal actually at this location, based upon some of our stakeholders, finding out there's a lot of semi-traffic, a lot of semi-turning in this area, which would make the toucan signal here probably not as good of an option, mainly because of the conflicts with some of the semi-trucks in this specific area for serving the businesses at that intersection. So those were a couple of the different alternates we looked at specifically at McElroy, was the rapid flashing beacon and the toucan. Another, was there?
I didn't realize that about the semi-trucks. Does it make sense at these busier intersections to have a consistent form of signage or a consistent way to travel across, so that there's an awareness of, okay, this is another busy intersection, so let's be mindful that there could be pedestrians or cyclists? I mean, as we look at both these intersections just being very busy.
Right. So I think what you're saying is to being consistent, so that drivers are used to seeing what.
Right.
I think it's a very good point that you make. I would agree. So one of the other options we looked at specifically here at McElroy, because we know McElroy and Husband is an intersection that is known to have some crashes in it. As well as there's a lot of traffic because of the businesses along Husband between McElroy and Boomer. So we wanted to look at, are there some other options, because of some of the feedback we got to stakeholders and from the committee, was there other options? And we looked at this, what we're calling the bypass. And so it's a low stress bike corridor, it's the bypass. And so we're looking right there down there at Cantwell, so just a block south of McElroy. This alternative would have the traffic using, or the pedestrians and bikes using Cantwell to go over to Duncan. And then at Duncan, then crossing McElroy on Duncan instead of Husband, going up and into the area for the church property. And we got a couple of options on the church property, but and I'll talk about them on the next slide. But specifically, this bypass, taking the PEDs over to Duncan instead of McElroy. We would then use the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at this location. It's an area that has better. It's easier to see as people are approaching at Duncan opposed to a Husband. It's a less trafficked area. There's not the number of semis that are turning at this location. So we felt like this would be a good low stress route for this. And so there's alternate B. And so I'll talk, this next slide finds out a little bit better. So what you can see is in alternate A, based upon some development that the church has planned, depending on when they do some of their development. Alternate A would have the bike path coming up really in the middle of their parking lot and then going over to Husband. And alternate B would come up Duncan Street really prior to their development and using the north side of their parking lot. And as Monty mentioned before, we'd visited with the church and they were in favor of this alternate through these areas. So this area would be it's almost a third alternate to the McElroy. It's just moving it over to Duncan. The last part as we terminate the thing here at Boomer Road, the first alternate, we're looking at specifically the Boomer Road intersection. What we'd be looking at is there'd be about a 10-foot sidewalk that would be along Husband and along Boomer, kind of on the west/south edge. That would follow, kind of front the property, and then there would be a new crosswalk that would be created, just really kind of north of where the existing stop bar is, that would connect to the other side of the road to connect to the sidewalk on the north side at this location. As you can see here in the second graphic, you could see how the bike path would come from the sidewalk, from the parking lot, turn, and then go and follow that 10-foot path. So this would be a new, basically the path here would come off of the new parking lot and then get onto a 10-foot path on this one. So this is what alternate 1 is. Alternate 2 essentially is this still using the same parking lot area, but after the parking lot, they would then go back onto Husband as a shared corridor and using Husband as the shared road. And so when we would have parking, then we'd have striping along Husband to get bikes and peds across the intersection through the middle of the intersection. Without the crosswalk, they would go along the Husband itself. And so those are the main items of that, of the different things that we're proposing and looking at as options in each one of these scenarios. Looking back at Boomer, if I didn't say it, the crosswalk we feel like is the best option of actually having a crosswalk, especially with the high school on the north side. There are a lot of pedestrians crossing this intersection, something that we feel like it is needed.
And you've also noted there that the signal would be an all red signal, so there's no right turn on red. Is that what that indicates?
Yes, and so one of the options we looked at here, and I think it's very similar to was it Monroe and University, where at this location that all the lights would go red, allowing the pedestrians to cross. It is a fairly long crossing. It's an unusual intersection, and so to provide as much safety as possible, that is something that we would look at as a possibility that we may want to do at this signal.
As a mother of a new driver over there, anything you can do to make that intersection a little bit easier to navigate would be amazing.
I'm actually very impressed. I used to live downtown at 7th and Husband and would walk north, my dog, and now I live at Boomer. So over the weekend I went and walked and right. For anyone, I encourage you to do that because I'm amazed. There are some wide streets, there are some wide corridors. This can be done. Mm-hmm. I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the work that the committee has put into this because I know when it first came out, there was a lot of concern about whether or not this would be a safety issue or if it could be done. It needs to be done. We need to have a connector that is a safe place for people who want to ride their bikes or walk or whatever. And so thank you for doing this. And like I said, I think I just want to make sure that at the busy intersections, there's some consistency so that we, part of it also is for those of us who drive also, learning what these signals are and learning what the signage means and what it means for the responsibility for those of us in a car to be aware of for those that are riding bikes and walking. So
right. Yeah, and that was actually one of the comments that we had. One of the stakeholders was how is the city going to educate the drivers about this corridor and what some of these new striping things mean. So that was a comment that had come up. So
okay.
This is mainly about controlling the east-west traffic. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Monty, this may be a question for you, but because it's been kind of disjointed, our process through this study, can you remind us, we're talking about the committee and we're talking about stakeholders, can you just give us a quick reminder of what the process has been from a public perspective?
Sure. We started off meeting with our advisory committee, and we were looking at several projects, and folks kind of divided up into teams, and we've kept them informed and have talked about meetings with them. And then as part of that, we identified stakeholders along the route, that businesses and other interested parties, and then had meetings with them. We actually rode and walked the site and drove the site and talked about individual things. Discussed things and then came back and received more comments and said, well, we're not real sure this works and that works. So it's very much been a collaborative process for several months.
So, and then what we're seeing in terms of a presentation today, that's kind of been
Yeah,
vetted
yes,
through
and these were circulated among that group, and I think even tweaked once after it was put together. So, yes, we've had I think we've done a good job of trying to make sure we got all the input, and it's been good input. It's been, I think we have a much, much better product.
Good. Yeah, I think it's on a project like this when there are clearly, right, it's a linear project, there's a lot of stakeholders involved that could be impacted, but also stakeholders within the community are bicyclists and pedestrians and things like that. So I think that process was really important to make sure we've been inclusive. And it's good to know that the presentation today has kind of been vetted through those folks.
I want to make a plug for the rapidly flashing beacon option. Originally, I wasn't a big fan of those for various reasons, and partly because the way I've seen them deployed in the past. But I was on a trip in the Dallas area last spring and saw a way they had done them, and they had put them on the traffic poles. So when you're driving down the road, you're used to seeing a traffic pole mean a signal of some kind, and then they would have several, and they were very consistent where they were. So I can envision that being a standard for us, and I do support the idea that it needs to be a consistent, whatever it is, needs to be consistent. Incidentally, they're probably a little cheaper to install, and certainly cheaper than maintain than the Toucan signals would be. So I think our preference from staff, particularly from mine, would be for those. I think they'll work well.
That reminds me of the crosswalk that used to be on Hall of Fame by the Colvin Center.
So that was called a hawk, and part of the problems with those around the country was that people really didn't understand the flashing red lights, and then coming to a stop, it was kind of an abnormal thing, and it really didn't work as well as maybe people had hoped it would.
Yeah, it felt like we just kept adding lights to that, and then we embedded lights in the street, and it was never a safe intersection. It was never a safe place to cross.
And when I was at the university, that was one of my projects, and the way we solved that was we took out sidewalks and we moved everything to Cleveland when we built the
which would suggest to me that
and that helped.
That signalized intersection might be the safer way to go than just having flashing lights.
Right. Well, but that's true. That's true. And that's the reason I kind of lean towards the Toucans. But the flashing beacons are a different type of signal, and you kind of get them on both sides. So I don't know. I think it's got a chance.
I mean, the only place we'd be looking at that specific option would be at Hall of Fame and Husband, right? Assuming that we went with the alternate around McElroy and Husband.
And then also at McElroy and Duncan.
Oh, we use those on the raised intersection? Okay.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to imagine those working on Hall of Fame because of that section of Hall of Fame. I mean, that is a busy part of Hall of Fame. People are coming out of the university and going up to Perkins Road, or going between that section. It's busy, it's fast, and I would be concerned that a flashing beacon like that would not be enough to get people to actually pay attention and stop at that intersection. Especially since it's not signalized now, and so it would be
correct.
Certainly
concerned where I saw these used on a street that's similar to Hall of Fame. It seems like they did have some curbs and some other modifications to the street, so we could certainly look at bumping curbs out, narrowing things in there, and call attention to it. So there could be some other things as well. Or we can certainly look at Toucan, or we can look at putting a signal in.
Because the Toucan would involve a signal, right? I mean, once
That's correct.
It would,
That's correct.
It would put a red light up for the traffic.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Is there any concern about the queue coming off of Main Street, at that coming,
Well, Duck and
Duck and
Hall of Fame
Yes.
would just be half a block from there.
but kind of both,
Yeah, same with
both
me. Yeah.
directions,
Both,
if you
yeah.
think about the level of traffic,
Yes.
if you signalized it.
Yeah, because then that'd be
With the
3 lights and
toucan.
But, I mean, ostensibly, they'd operate the same way. I mean, from a traffic perspective, when somebody on a bike comes up and hits the signal, the traffic's either getting a red light or they're getting a
They're
flashing
getting a flashing light, correct,
light. So the traffic's stopping until that person can cross the road
correct.
in either one. I mean, I think either way, you're stopping traffic on Hall of Fame there. The question is which one is going to actually get cars to stop and not have somebody hit a pedestrian in the street. Which, the whole point of this is, again, the low stress thing. If I'm riding my bike with my kids down that intersection, I want traffic to stop and to see that and to pay attention to it and actually,
And again, I guess it's really our first step in the community of trying to create this network within a network of how we move people, active transportation from the north to the south or south to north. And then becomes a backbone of branching east and west.
So was the committee that reviewed this stuff in terms of the alternatives around the flashing lights versus the toucan, was there a preference? Was there I would imagine that the bicycle pedestrian people probably wanted the toucans more than the folks who either, were more worried about vehicle traffic, maybe were more interested in the, that's just me guessing.
Right, I think you're right. I think the users of the corridor, the bike, would like to see that stopped. A lot of what we're finding then, but the other users of the corridor with the vehicles would like to see the left turns allowed coming in and out of the businesses and allowed on the area. And so that's one of the things with the toucan, it doesn't allow those left turn lanes because you're really only providing access for the bikes and peds, which really makes the signal shorter than a traditional signal because you're only stopping it for those to travel from one side to the other, and then it's back to green on McElroy. So really, it's less stopping on McElroy, but it does limit those movements along Husband for a left turn to go across on that side of things. It's really a right turn movement only.
Well, and assuming we're replacing the bridge just north of there off of Husband, you're not going to have a ton of traffic coming southbound on Husband onto Hall of Fame either way, right? You're not going to be going through there, so you're going to really limit that.
Yeah.
And having tried to turn left off of Husband onto Hall of Fame, going in either one of those directions, it's not a safe. It's a difficult turn to make anyway, and so I don't know. I tend to value what seems to me to be added safety of using the toucan at that intersection, just because it solves part of the traffic problem that exists now, which is the left turns there, which are dangerous. I don't. Here's my question, I guess first, Monty. What do you want us to do with this tonight?
Well, we'd like some direction. We can certainly bring you more information in terms of the toucan versus the rapidly flashing beacon. I think more importantly is the route at the north end and the possible bypass, because that has implications that we have to get easements and negotiate those. And if we have that approval tonight and the rest of it, we can begin working on that, and then we can come back and have further discussion on exactly how we signalize the intersections.
Is this something, Monty, that once it's, will it be implemented as one project, or will it be incremental in terms of intersections?
Well, we have already begun incremental work on it through our pavement management programs that you've approved the last 2 years. We have begun making improvements in the street. I would anticipate that we would do this in one contract when we're ready to go to bid.
Well, from my perspective, the bypass around the McElroy intersection makes a lot of sense because that it's really would be very difficult given the businesses that are right there. There are two signalized intersections right on either side of that as well, so you'd have that concern about backing traffic up there. Although I guess moving it west would cause that Duck and McElroy intersection to potentially be impacted by people having to stop, one short block up at that intersection. I guess my overall comment would be the point here is that we are actually going to impact traffic in order to make this corridor safer for folks on bikes, and so we'd have to go forward with this saying, yes, this will have an impact on people driving cars through this area, and we are accounting for that and recognizing that that's actually the goal, right? Is to maybe get people to drive less on this corridor and not come through these areas, and so.
Yeah,
But
we would like for them to get to Main and Duck as quickly as possible.
Yeah. But I do think that detour around that intersection makes some sense. Makes it a little easier to get through there without having to make so much change to the existing structure. The difference between 1A and 1B, what is, in terms of where it goes through the parking lot?
That has to do with some of their future building needs. At some point, they want to build on the kind of the west end of their parking lot.
So they prefer 1A?
And, well, they're really open to either one. We might do 1B now, and then in the future, as part of their project, they'd move over to 1B or 1A.
Yeah.
But that'd be part of our discussions with the church. Mm-hmm. For us, I don't really think it makes that much difference to us at this point.
It kind of looks like 1B is a more natural travel pattern.
It is.
Fewer turns.
It is, but,
But if you start with
us.
one, and my thing is consistent. So I would much rather think about what makes the most sense in a long term and stick with that rather than switch it up.
Sure.
Well, again, what's the plan here?
So if you would, I think a motion to approve the low-stress bike corridor with the Cantwell bypass, and that will bring back the discussion on signalization for you at a later time would be appropriate, and that would let us move forward.
Yeah, from my standpoint, everything here I think looks really good. I think certainly the crosswalk alternate on Boomer seems to make the most sense there, as you suggested that was probably the most. That needs to happen no matter what.
Yep.
If we do nothing else, that intersection needs that upgrade. Really, it's just the intersection at Husband and Hall of Fame that I think is the one that seems the most like we need to figure out exactly what we want to do there. The rest of this, I think, looks pretty straightforward. Is that?
Yeah.
So, does someone have a motion on the agenda item?
Motion to approve the low-stress bike corridor on Husband Street with the Cantwell bypass. Do I need to add anything to it?
I think that gets you where you need to go for now.
Yes, it does.
Second.
Third.
We have a motion and a second to approve this corridor with the Cantwell bypass, pending further discussion of intersections. Please vote. The vote of 4-0, that item is approved. Thank you, Monty and Russell and everybody who's worked on that for so long to get us to where we are. Item 7D, authorized deferred maintenance projects, including several things that Monty's going to list for us.
I think it's no secret that the pandemic has hit all of City Hall from a staffing level, and that's particularly true in Public Works. There's been several projects that we have worked with them on that they just have not been able to do, and then others that they normally would have been able to do. So we've looked at that. We had some money left over from some projects that we returned back to the general fund last fall. We identified that as a possible source of funds. We have some money in the stormwater fund as well. And then as we were talking about that, the revetment project at Boomer Lake also came up. So that they were planning, that Public Works was planning to do, and we thought we'd incorporate it into this project as well. We've given you the list of the projects. Thought we could go over briefly some of them. On stormwater, one of them would be the Berry Creek channel improvements. This is one where you approved us acquiring some easements, and then we also moved some fences. And this is the channel that runs between Surrey Hills and Berry Creek. We've got some miscellaneous drainage improvements around the community, and then also the channels south of 12th need to be cleaned out. We have some others. We'd be doing some of that. Boomer Dam is an NRCS structure that the City of Stillwater is a sponsor of. Part of our contract with them is that we will maintain that structure and the outlet works, and which is a spillway. It's in good shape, but we need to take care of removing some vegetation, and then particularly the spillway is now 35 years old. It's concrete. It needs some attention in a few areas. And then, of course, the West Shore revetment that I mentioned. Transportation, the one that's kind of an embarrassment to us is the asphalt curb to the south that used to prevent people from making illegal turns in to drop their mail off. That has kind of moved up. We have a plan to fix that. 500 West University, that's at University and Knobloch at the fire station. There's concern there with some of the businesses of people not being able to make that turn. We had some ideas for that. And then 3 sidewalks. The West University Circle from University up to Cleveland. We need a sidewalk in there for the students that use that. Similar on the south side of Miller from Duncan to Duck, large student population in those apartments, and they need a sidewalk. And then on 9th, from Lowry to the Armory, there's a gap in sidewalk there that runs in front of Tiny Paws that we need to complete. So quickly, this is the flume in Berry Creek. This is you're looking east. Those fences you see are the backs of the Surrey Hill properties. To the right is the drainage that's coming underneath 19th, and the property to the right is their south property line is 19th. This is where those 2 channels intersect. You can see if you were a homeowner, that'd be very, very difficult to maintain. And we would build a concrete drop structure in there that would be a lot easier to maintain, be more pleasing. This is the Boomer Dam project. This particular picture, you're looking to the southwest. You can see some vegetation. This slopes to here. There's a level spot and then a very steep slope going on down. The view on the right is a close-up of this area. There's some manways that need to be, not manways, but inspection ports that need to be pulled and looked at. There's some drainage grates that need to be pulled and cleaned, and of course, some of this cleaned up. Some spalling taking place. Some of the joints need to be sealed. This is at the level spot looking back up. Just kind of want to give you an idea of how much the water drops coming over the spillway and then coming down. We do not know, this is the southeast corner. It's the top of that retaining wall. There is a pretty good drop behind that wall. We have no idea how that fence got destroyed. we're just trying to figure out how it did. But we do need to clean that fence up and take care of it. So that would be the work on the spillway. There's also some vegetation on the dam that needs to be cleaned. The revetment would start here at Lakeview. We would come in, regrade this slope down to the water, and where the water normally fluctuates, kind of flatten that out, and then put interlocking concrete blocks then that allow vegetation to go up through it, so it'll be a more grassline, natural looking, and protect the bank. An example of the street drainage, this is on 19th, just east of Country Club. You can see how close the drop-off is here to the edge of the road, moving back. We'd come in, put a drop structure, clean this up, make that safe. We've got a few more, not quite that bad, but we've got some other locations of drainage to take care of like that. Sidewalks, this is the University Circle that I talked about. This is looking north. You can see the path that the students are using. This is looking back south. Then right about there is where the sidewalk starts. We'd pick it up here and run it up to Cleveland. South Miller, there's an apartment on the southeast corner of that intersection. There's a sidewalk in front of that apartment. And then from here down to Duncan, you again see students walk through there. That's very steep. It'd be easy to lose your balance and fall down into the street. And we would put a little sidewalk in there as well. And then this is the one between the Armory and Lowry, and there's tiny paws there. There's actually a sidewalk right about there, and we just bring it straight to there. Budget expenditures, about $850,000 for the drainage, $6,000 for transportation on the streets, and about $223,000 on the sidewalks. We think we may need some retaining walls in there. The general fund, we're asking $485,000 from 101, $170 from 105. Some of those funds are what we returned back, and I think we identified those in the report. Stormwater fund has $400,000 that'd be available for this, and that still leaves the balance in the fund. Half-cent sales tax, $70,000 for the transportation-related projects. The expenses were $1,124,999, and so we just rounded it up a dollar. Any questions?
Councilors?
It's nice to see some sidewalks that would be connected. We get that asked a lot as far as just why do sidewalks suddenly end? So this takes care of a few of them in some key places.
Yeah, how do we identify which sidewalks go on this list? Because I know there are a number of places around town where we'd like to see.
There are. These were sidewalks that were on Public Works list that they would have normally done with their sidewalk crew and have not been able to get to. So that's how those were picked. Those came directly from them.
Do we have a list of priority on sidewalks somewhere?
We have a list of requests for sidewalks. I don't know that it's a priority, but yeah.
I would love to see us put something like that together, because there are, I know I've gotten several requests on the north side of McElroy, that needs a sidewalk, and plenty of other, Sanger Road by the school. Kind of get a sense of what those project costs would be and see if we can kind of get a hierarchy together, so at least we can tell people, hey, we know it needs it, here's how much it's going to cost, here's kind of where we think it might come from. As part of the time projects, we have the one on McElroy and the ones on Lakeview on the time projects. Okay. I think we had one on 19th at one point identified. Sanger Road's a real challenge because we don't have any right-of-way, and that you really need to
rebuild the road on Sanger.
Yeah.
In order to do that, same would be on Country Club as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like when the children have shown us exactly where the sidewalk needs to go. Right
Cuts
here.
down on the surveying costs, right? Further questions on this project list, councilors? I appreciate the creativity in finding funds to get some of this stuff done and move forward
You
on some of
bet.
these things that just need to stop being deferred and need to just get on the completed end of the checklist. So appreciate the work there, Monty. Is there a motion on the item, councilors?
Motion to authorize deferred maintenance projects to include the following: drainage, channel and dam maintenance, sidewalks and minor street improvements, and erosion revetment at Boomer Lake, and approve budget amendments appropriating funds not to exceed $1,125,000 for the projects.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the projects. Please vote. The vote of 4-0, the item is approved. Next up from Monty is approval retaining Ghost and Associates under a master services agreement to provide traffic engineering study of Duck between 6th and Hall of Fame. Mr. Collins.
So this kind of ties back with our low-stress bike corridor and our desire as a community to traffic calming and how we move after transportation. When we milled and overlaid Duck from 12th to 6th, that was a really good candidate for what we call a road diet and put the bikes on them. Engineering does not really believe that north of 6th on Duck that is really a good candidate. Part of our concern would be if we do reduce traffic there, will it move to Husband while we're trying to discourage people on Husband from using motorized vehicles? So we thought maybe we ought to bring in an expert and help us look at this. We also prepared, if you'll remember correctly, before COVID, we did do a study of if we made Duck a boulevard and bike tracks, and I believe that was $13 million. So obviously that would be probably a multi-year project. We can, and then as part of our 6th Avenue corridor study, was recommending that between 6th and Elm we do bike tracks, and then from that point forward we wouldn't. So we've talked with traffic engineering consultants they have offices in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Be the Tulsa office. They're very familiar with Stillwater. They have done work for us before. They do work for other individuals in the community. They would study from 6th to Hall of Fame, particularly the signalized intersections, and then also, I believe it's a Maple intersection. They would model if a 3-lane section would work or not, so we'll have a definitive answer on that question for the community. And then also what improvements we could do with the idea that we have the vision for what we want Duck to look like in the future, and maybe we start doing that incrementally and start getting some concepts of how we could calm traffic there and improve traffic flow. Some of that may be better signalization of this, better timing and coordination of the signals. Gauss and Associates would provide the local support for that project, and then TEC would work as a consultant for them. Be happy to answer any questions.
Do they have ways that they can model, because at some point the convention center will be
Yes,
right over there?
we discussed that's part of the scope.
Okay.
As we've discussed the convention center going in there. That's one of the reasons we picked the Maple intersection to also study. Thank you for that point.
Thank you.
I guess my only comment on what you just said, Monty, would be I don't know that we need a definitive answer on whether a 3-lane section will work or not. What we need to know is what would the impacts of making that 3 lanes be, and are we do those impact, do we find the value of a 3-lane section to be worth whatever those impacts will be, right? I don't know that there's a definitive answer one way or the other.
That's
right?
fair.
Because, I've had several comments from folks who really love what it looks like they're south of 6th and feel that it would be helpful. And I think, just like trying to turn left off McElroy or off Husband onto McElroy or onto Hall of Fame, trying to make any left turn off of Duck in that section is a problem with it being a 4-lane street. And to me, there's some benefit in a turn lane with 2 travel lanes. So anyway, I'm looking forward to the study, and hopefully it will be presented in that way in terms of, here's what the options are and here's what the costs and benefits of each of those options will be, and not just yes or no, we can or can't do it.
Our consultants are real good about giving you the impacts as opposed to staff saying yes or no.
Okay. I appreciate that. Further comments, questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve retaining Goss & Associates under Master Services Agreement to provide a traffic engineering study of Duck Street between 6th Avenue and Hall of Fame Avenue and allocate $25,000 from FY20 pavement management funds for the completion of the study.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agreement. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. Appreciate your work. Item 8A under resolutions. This would have been a resolution regarding the dilapidated structure, but we've put that item off to sometime in the future.
April 18th.
So we will skip item 8A.
Mayor, could I trouble you to make a motion to pass that resolution as well?
Yes, I will.
Thank
We can
you.
do that. Counselors, we need a motion to postpone item 8A until the April 18th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table resolution CC-21-38 to the April 18th meeting. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that resolution's tabled. Too many papers up here. 8B. All right. 8B is resolution CC-22-02. Resolution CC-22-02. A resolution authorizing the calling and holding of an election in the city of Stillwater, state of Oklahoma, for the purpose of submitting to the registered qualified electors of said city the question of the issuance of the bonds of said city in the sum of $9 million to provide funds for the purpose of constructing, furnishing, and equipping a new fire station and levying and collecting an annual tax, in addition to all other taxes upon the taxable property in said city for the payment of principal and interest on said bonds, and levying and collecting an annual tax, in addition to all other taxes upon all the taxable property in said city for the payment of principal and interest on said bonds. This would be a resolution calling for an election on whether we should issue $9 million worth of bonds in order to build a new fire station. Beth Ann, do you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion?
I do not.
Thank you. So we've got 2 different resolutions here, B and C, one for the fire station, one for the animal welfare facility. These are both projects that have been discussed at length in part of our time projects and the discussion that's happened to that point. We've discussed them a little bit up here already. So we would have to call for these elections. The election dates would be April something.
I think it's April 5th, if memory serves.
Is it the first Tuesday of April?
Yeah.
April 5th.
5th?
April 5th.
5th.
So questions, comments, what do you guys want to do with the resolution?
Mayor, is there any concern, as I'm looking at the packet we have it as -2 instead of -02. Is that any worry at all?
I can't
Okay.
imagine it is, but
It's not.
Okay.
It's basically a Scrivener's error, and the title really is what.
Okay.
Okay. Do we want to call an election? No, I appreciate that. Do we want to call an election in April for bonds of $9 million to build a fire station? This would be on Western Road, on property owned by the university. It would be leased under basically a 100-year lease. It's a 50-year lease with 2 city options to renew for 25 years each. We've discussed, city manager has discussed the costs, and this is enough money to build the fire station we need to replace station number 2, which is the campus fire station. Been subject of quite a bit of discussion in the community, and something that's needed sorely for our fire department to continue to respond to emergencies in our community. Moving the station actually improves our ISO rating, which means our property insurance rates in the city will go down. So yeah, I mean, this has been a decade of conversation in the city to try to get this new fire station built. It's a distinct need, and I think we need to pass the resolution and set an election and pass a bond.
And it's not about not being thoughtful and reminiscent of the current fire station that is located on campus, nor is it about tearing it down and being awful, but this is about the safety and welfare of emergency vehicles being able to effectively and quickly get to the emergency that they are called to do. So.
Yes, and just to be clear, that fire station would revert to the ownership of
Correct.
Oklahoma State, and it
Correct.
is protected by
Yes.
historical building status.
That'll be good to bring that up.
Yes. But it's not a good fire station.
No.
It is not a useful fire station for the community, and it's time to replace it. Is there a motion on the resolution?
Motion to adopt resolution number CC 22-02.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, resolution CC-22-2 is adopted. We'll move to resolution CC-22-03, which is a resolution authorizing the calling and holding of an election in the city of Stillwater, state of Oklahoma, for the purpose of submitting to the registered qualified electors of said city the question of the issuance of bonds of said city in the sum of $3,400,000 to provide funds for the purpose of constructing, furnishing, and equipping a new animal welfare facility to be owned exclusively by said city, and levying and collecting an annual tax, in addition to all other taxes upon the taxable property in said city, for the payment of principal and interest on said bonds. So this would be a bond in order to construct a new animal welfare facility. Also part of the time projects, also something that's been discussed for a long time in the community. Councilors, comments, questions on issuing this resolution?
If any of you have been in the current animal welfare building, it is a very, the fact that they do as much as they do in this building in the condition that it's in is amazing to me. One of my first things as a counselor was to tour it, and I was amazed. And if you are active on social media, you see how many lost animals there are in this city, and the care and the effectiveness that the animal welfare program does bode to helping with that situation if you have a lost pet or they are left or whatever. And it's just, it's very interesting. So I just encourage you guys to educate yourselves on what an animal welfare program does for your city and community. And it's not about competing with the Stillwater Humane Society. It really is about, once again, kind of the safety and protection of community members when you do have a loose pet or animal, or one is killed and needs to be taken care of. So it is a very vital and important city service that I learned as a city councilor is a lot more important than I had realized. This is much, much needed and has been put off too long. It's time to do something about it.
I completely agree with everything you just said, except I don't want to put these two bonds on the same ballot. Personally, for one reason and one reason only, we have to pass the fire station bond. It is an absolute necessity, and I don't at all mean to, diminish the need for the animal welfare facility. It is also a need for our community. I think my concern is that there's more folks who are not as interested in passing a bond for the animal welfare facility, and I understand that, and it's certainly the city's right to vote on these issues. I think I would prefer that we have the clarity of one project for people to consider and to vote on at this point. I think I would prefer that we defer a vote on the animal welfare facility until later this year or early next year, so that we can focus on passing the first bond that's been passed in the city of Stillwater in 20 years, and create that clarity among our residents so that they are focused on one question and one question only. And to me, that is hopefully will be helpful in getting the fire station bond passed and making sure people are not distracted by multiple issues.
Well, and I think we also would like to have success in these things that we are passing bonds for. And if we can get the fire station one passed, then let me just say I have planted the seed about the animal welfare and agree. I think having success with things that we can pass and showing the community that we can utilize those funds in a way that they have asked us to use them for and move that forward, I think is important. So I'm good with that.
So I guess we could either not make any move on this resolution, or we could table this resolution indefinitely. Is there a
It's
legal-
interesting. You probably don't want to table it because it's so date specific in here, because it actually calls for, the date at the time. And I've been listening to your comments and thinking about what an appropriate motion might be. So, you can, my suggestion might be to see if there's somebody that wants to make a motion to take no action on this resolution. That might be the cleanest way to do it.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. I will actually make a motion to take no action on resolution CC-22-3.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to take no action on the resolution. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, we'll take no action on resolution 22-3. Again, I just want to be clear that I absolutely think we need to pass that bond and get that animal control facility built. My only reason for delaying it would be to make that election perfectly clear that one issue and one issue only is up for discussion. Item 8C. No, I'm sorry, 8D. Resolution CC-22-4, a resolution declaring the intent to consider approval of an amendment to the project plan of creation of a tax increment district under the Local Development Act, directing preparation of an amended project plan, convening a meeting of the Stillwater Downtown Campus Link Project Plan Review Committee, directing the review committee to make findings as to the eligibility and financial impact, if any, on taxing jurisdictions and business activities within the district, and directing the review committee to make a recommendation with respect to the proposed amendment project plan. Melissa Reams, fill us in.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Melissa Reams, Deputy City Manager. The city has been presented with a pretty interesting economic development project from a manufacturing company. And the building that they are looking at is on Airport Road. So it's at the northern end of Boomer Lake. And one of the requests for financial assistance was that the city enter into a TIF. We have consulted with Special Counsel for Economic Development Law, Center for Economic Development Law, and after evaluating the proposal, they recommend that instead of developing a brand new TIF that includes just this project, that council requests the reconvening of the original Downtown Campus Link Committee, of which the mayor was the chair, and we look at amending that plan to include this new property, this new economic development project. The budgets would be separate. It would be like this was much like the TIF, the two TIFs that are up at Boomer Lake Station. You had TIF number 4, which encompassed all the publicly owned property, And then if needed, there is a TIF number, we're calling it TIF number 5, but till it's actuated, we don't really know what its number is going to be because they're consecutive numbered. So this one could be TIF number 5. So this one becomes kind of a subset of the downtown campus link TIF. The positives to reconvening the committee is, number one, the committee's familiar with the process. They're familiar with the project plan as it exists, and all they would need to do is evaluate this addition to that project plan. Nothing would change about the distribution of funds or the allocation between direct and indirect participation. All of that would remain the same. The project, while it feels like it's an expedited process, it's really not. The committee still meets, the committee still evaluates the economic benefits and the overall benefit to the project plan itself. Then they make a recommendation to Planning Commission. And Planning Commission reviews, just like they did on the original document. And from there, Planning Commission and I will bring a recommendation to you as the council to either amend, or they would recommend not amending the plan. We still have to have 2 public hearings. So it's not like this is anything that is not open to the public to hear their commentary on this additional part of the plan. They still would get to express their opinions and their desires there. And after that, then we would by ordinance adopt the amendment of the plan. So what the resolution before you this evening is simply you as the body reconvening the original committee to look at amending the downtown campus link project plan.
Thank you, Melissa. Councilors, any questions?
I'm really grateful that we have all these systems in place where we have these committees and citizens that are able to participate and stakeholders that are helping us make these decisions. I'm really grateful for all the work that staff does for that, but also that we have the support of these community members and stakeholders helping us make those choices. I will, do you want me to make a motion, or you have something? You ready for a motion?
I'm ready for whatever you want to do.
Motion to adopt resolution number 2022-04.
Second. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that resolution is adopted. I'm looking forward to hearing what the committee has to say about that project. That takes us to item 9, ordinances. On first read, we have ordinance 3489, which is an ordinance of the city of Stillwater, Oklahoma, granting a non-exclusive permit to Clarity Telecom LLC for the construction and operation of a cable system. Kimberly Carnley's name was on this, but she's not here tonight, so I don't know if someone else has comments that they'd like to make. Mr. McNichol?
This is an agreement. This is an agreement with Blue Peak for their service of television signals via their fiber optic system that they're installing.
Yeah, so it's Clarity LLC, Telecom LLC, but that's
yes, Clarity LLC doing business is Blue Peak.
Yeah, and they're constructing new fiber optic system already, which will also carry cable television with it.
That is
and
correct.
So we have to have, they have to have a permit to do that, in addition to the other cable providers we have in town. So, comments, questions, motions on the ordinance.
Motion to advance ordinance number 3489 to second reading.
Second.
Motion, we have a motion and a second to advance ordinance 3489 to second read. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that ordinance is advanced to second reading. I will just say that for all of you out there who want additional options when it comes to internet and cable service, this is a very big step forward for you, for all of us. On second read, ordinance 3487, an ordinance rezoning attractive land located at 1223 South Husband Place from CG Commercial General to RSS Small Lot Single Family Residential District. Councilors?
Motion to adopt ordinance number 3487.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, that ordinance is adopted. Also on second read, ordinance 3488, an ordinance closing a general utility easement located in the northeast quarter of Section 14, Township 19 North, Range 2 East of the Indian Meridian, City of Stillwater, Payne County, Oklahoma, on property addressed as 711 North Main Street. Councilors.
Motion to adopt ordinance 3488.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Please vote. The vote 4-0, ordinance 3488 is adopted. Reports from officers and boards. As I mentioned, Ms. Carnley is out this evening, but we have visiting city attorney. I don't know what the correct title is. Beth Ann Childs with us. Beth Ann?
Thank you, Mayor. We're requesting an executive session pursuant to 25 OS Section 307B1 of the Oklahoma Open Meeting Act for the purpose of confidential communications and discussions regarding the employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or resignation of Kimberly Carnley, who is currently serving as interim city attorney.
Thank you very much. Mr. McNichol.
Thanks, Mayor. The City of Stillwater received a generous donation of $86,000 from the Brown Foundation to replace the gymnasium floor in the Stillwater Armory Recreation Center. The Armory building is the home of Stillwater Area Sports Association, also known as SASA. SASA is a nonprofit organization that provides after-school programs, pickleball, adult volleyball, youth basketball, and more to Stillwater and the surrounding communities. Thanks to the Brown Foundation, we are able to continue preserving the Armory and utilizing it as a multi-purpose recreation center that benefits our entire community.
Excellent. That is good news. Vice Mayor.
Yes, the League of Women Voters will be holding a mayoral forum here in the council hearing room on this Thursday, January 27th from 7 to 8 p.m. Residents can watch the meeting live on AT&T Uverse Channel 99, Suddenlink Channel 14, or on the City of Stillwater's YouTube channel. Election Day is February 8th, with early voting on February 3rd and 4th. Get to know your candidates and please vote.
Councilor Hawkins.
The bird ban in Payne County has been extended through February 7th. There is an extreme fire danger, and it is unlawful for any person to build a campfire or burn trash or other material that may cause a forest, grass, range, crop, or other wildlands fires. Check the City of Stillwater's Facebook page for additional information and updates.
Thank you. Councilor Jaleski.
Yes. Stillwater Mayor is not the only thing you'll be able to vote for on February 8th. You'll also find propositions for the transportation sales tax and visitor tax on the ballot. We encourage every registered voter to learn more about these propositions and make their voice heard. Visit stillwater.org/time for more information. I think we've got a lot of really accessible information kind of gathered on these topics. I know staff's done a great job kind of getting the word out around the community about the time projects and some of these sales tax and visitors tax propositions. And so I think just spending a little bit of time educating ourselves about what this is and getting out and voting.
Absolutely. I will let you know that the annual Dancing with Daddy and Mummy and Son dances have been adapted into one event for 2022. The Stillwater Community Center staff is planning an outdoor dance party that will allow attendees to have an evening of dancing under the stars while still taking precautions to reduce the spread of COVID-19. The outdoor dance will take place this summer, but the official date and location will depend on the construction schedule for Community Center's south entrance, and full details will be announced closer to the event. Appreciate the community center staff, Stephanie and her team on finding ways to continue to do fun events while also taking safety precautions that need to be taken. All right, item 12, appointment to fill City Council seat number 3. We received a number of applications, 12 I think was the total. A lot of very qualified, involved, active folks in our community that have applied to come here and join us for some reason to sit up here and do this job. And we certainly appreciate the interest that all of those folks have shown. We have a couple of questions we need to I guess, deal with. One, the charter requires us to either appoint somebody to the seat within 6 weeks, or it goes to a special election. I received a couple of comments, emails from folks who suggested maybe that we would not appoint someone and go ahead and allow an election to take place. That I think would have to be in June, within a potential runoff in like August or September, or maybe even later than that. So it would be a while, could be a while before we'd have someone seated. And also I reminded someone who asked me that question that not all 12 of these folks might sign up to put their names in the hat to run for an election. It's a little bit of a different animal than being appointed. So I personally, I think we should move forward with making an appointment out of the pool, but I wanted to give council an opportunity if someone feels otherwise, speak now. Otherwise, the process here, there's no real process defined in terms of how this works. The council has received all the applications, had the opportunity to speak to folks if they'd like. At this point, assuming folks have made their done their diligence on these candidates, I'll open the floor to the council for either comments, questions, or to make a nomination or make a motion to appoint one of the candidates to the city council seat.
I agree with you, Mary Joyce. We had a great pool of candidates. It gave me hope that there was that people really do want to serve their community and do that. So thank you to everyone who did put their application in. And also thank you to everyone who wrote a recommendation letter for those individuals. I think that speaks volumes as far as how the community views you as well. So thank you to that. And at that, I'm going to make a motion to appoint Kevin Clark to the empty seat position on City Council.
Second.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on the table to appoint Kevin Clark to the vacant City Council seat number 3. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, Mr. Clark is appointed to City Council seat number 3. Again, we appreciate everyone who put in their application and for the service that you provide to our community. Mr. Clark will be sworn into the seat at our next meeting on January 31st. This time I will recess the City Council meeting and move us over to the Stillwater Utilities Authority agenda. And I will call the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting for January 24th, 2022 to order. First up, we have a consent docket. Trustees?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
With a motion and a second, please vote. With a vote of 4-0, the consent docket is approved. Under general orders, item A is approve an award of a contract for the purchase of new recycling roll-off containers for the Convenience Collection Center. Mr. Chris Knight.
Good evening, Chris Knight, Waste Management Director. As a quick back history, the recycling processing contract ends June 30th, 2022. Of course, that brings some challenges. One of the challenges that I'm here to speak to you about tonight is at the Convenience Collection Center. The recycling roll-off containers that the recycling material is placed in are owned by our current provider. So when the contract ends, he's going to take the containers back. I did visit with them about potentially purchasing those containers, and they didn't really have any interest in doing so. So to kind of get ahead of it, we advertised a bid to buy our own containers. So that's what I'm here tonight to ask for approval to buy those containers. We did have 2 bids that were submitted, and the bid by Custom Manufacturing met all the technical specifications and was the most responsible bidder. I do have a recommendation, but do you have any questions?
Trustees? What's your recommendation, Chris?
Motion to award the contract for the purchase of new recycling roll-off containers to Custom Manufacturing and authorize expenditures up to $84,555 for the purchase of the containers.
Trustees?
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. with a vote of
Oh.
4-0. That item is approved. Item 5B, approve relocation of overhead electric service on Monticello Drive as part of the pavement management program and approve the budget. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, trustees. Lauren Smith, Electric Utility Director. On August 30, 2020, City Council approved a pavement management project to reconstruct Monticello Drive between University and Admiral Street. As part of the project, approximately 1,100 feet of overhead electric service will be relocated underground to incorporate an active transportation path along the drive. You can see from the drawing that I have here, perhaps. There you go. This is University. This is Admiral up here at the top. And we're talking about relocating this green line will be an underground, will replace the overhead with underground service. Cost estimates for the relocation project are approximately $179,000. This includes staff labor, equipment, materials, and directional boring cost. Staff is seeking approval of the Monticello Drive relocation project at the cost listed above and the approval of a budget amendment appropriating $130,000 for materials and directional boring services. Staff labor cost and equipment cost are accounted for in the electric O&M budget for FY22. Funding for this project is available in the Electric Rate Stabilization Fund, and I have a motion here, but I will pause here and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Lauren. Trustees?
Motion?
I guess so.
Okay. Motion to approve the Monticello Electric Line Relocation Project and the budget amendment allocating up to $130,000 from the Rate Stabilization Fund for materials and directional boring services.
Thank you, Lauren.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Were you asking a question or are you making a motion?
I was getting ready to make a motion.
I was just going to ask real quick. How long did you say this was?
It's approximately 1,100 feet, 0.2 of a mile.
For $180,000.
This is why
our power lines aren't buried everywhere. Right?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important for part of this project. I mean, we're going to be reconstructing this whole street. We might as well do it right and get everything where it needs to be. But in case anybody was wondering why we don't bury all of our electric lines, that cost figure is why.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Gillespie, or Trustee Gillespie.
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Approve this project. Please vote. The vote of 4-0, the project is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Item 6C is authorize staff to pursue refunding of approximately $54 million in Series 2014A revenue bonds previously issued by the Stillwater Utilities Authority to fund the construction of the Stillwater Energy Center. Christy Cluck.
Good evening. Christy Cluck, Finance Director. And I am here to talk about debt refinancing. And so in October 2014, the SUA issued approximately $61.8 million in revenue bonds to fund the construction of the Stillwater Energy Center, which is our power generation facility. So today, approximately $54 million in bonds remains outstanding. Since issuance of the bonds in 2014, interest rates overall have dropped. And so this has created an opportunity for us to explore possibly refinancing those bonds. And that will hopefully allow us to reduce our interest expense. In the municipal bond world, a refinancing is known as a refunding. And so I want to point that out because you will see that terminology if we do pursue this, and so I want you to be familiar with that.
I thought we were going to get $54 million back.
Yeah.
No, unfortunately not.
Good thought.
So the Baker Group is serving as the SUA's financial advisor, and they have put together a bond analysis for this refunding opportunity. And as you look at this analysis, which is included in your packet, just keep in mind that many assumptions and estimates were used in preparing this. So actual results will likely differ. However, we do feel that it's a fair representation of what we might see. So looking at that bond analysis, the savings that the SUA may realize is estimated at about $200,000 per year over the remaining life of the bonds, which is 21 years. So in total, that estimated savings is $4.3 million. And to provide a bit of scale, that equates to roughly 1 year of debt service on these bonds. So our annual debt service payment is about $4.1 million. Now, we're not going to see a check written to us for $4.3 million, and we're not going to see that in one lump sum to be able to allocate towards another project. We will see that, like I said, over the remaining life of the bonds, and so our annual debt service budget will just be reduced by that much. So because of the potential savings that we think that we'll see, staff does believe that this is worth exploring. And so for that reason, an RFP has already been sent out for underwriting services. And an underwriter is essentially the party that will sell the bonds, the new bonds, to the investors. So that RFP was sent out to 16 firms, and it is due back before the end of January. And even though we've taken this step already, I just want to assure you that at any time during this process and for whatever reason, if we see that this does not appear to be financially beneficial to us, we can opt not to proceed with the refunding. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or I have a recommendation.
Thank you, Christy. Trustees?
Christy, you said the estimated savings were 4.3 million?
In total, yes.
In total. I know on the second page, there's some information, the refunding analysis on the bottom of that second page that then has an adjusted estimated savings that's lower.
Yes.
Could you talk just a little bit about that?
Yes, and actually I might refer you on back a couple of pages. And unfortunately, there's not page numbers on my copy. Is there not on yours as well? So it would be
You might look at the
page 5. It would be the 5th page back.
What's the heading at the top?
And it's titled Debt Service Comparison.
Okay, perfect.
So it's that schedule there at the top of the 5th page.
Okay.
And this equates a little bit more to a cash basis look. So that column on the far right where it says savings, this column totals the 4.3 million, but that is the annual estimated savings. And you can see in the earlier years, there's greater savings, and then that kind of reduces as we follow the life of the bonds.
Okay.
Christy, how much does it cost us to do this?
So those costs are estimated as well. Cost of issuance is estimated at $219,000. There's also the underwriter's discount. Sorry, I'm on page 3, at the bottom of page 3. We have the underwriter's discount and the cost of issuance. Are you following me?
I got you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And like I said, these are estimates at this point. We don't know what the underwriter's discount is going to be until we get those RFPs back from the underwriters and get further into the process. Also, as far as the cost of issuance goes, we already know that there's a modification for bond counsel fees as we've talked to our bond counsel. This is just, like I said, what our financial advisor feels is a fair representation of what we might realize.
So is the 4.3 million over 20 years, net of the costs of the issuance?
Yes, it takes into account the cost of the issuance, because those costs are wrapped up in the new bond issuance.
Okay. Okay, so that's built into the.
It is,
To the
yes.
debt service comparison.
Yes, it's not something on top of that that we will have to budget for and pay.
And so then what you're saying is if we get our RFQ responses back and the rates aren't what we thought they were going to be, or if it doesn't look like it's going to save us that much money, then we can just say, no, never mind, we don't want to do it.
Yes, that's exactly right.
How much does it cost us at that point?
Actually, at that point, nothing.
Okay.
Most of these costs don't come to fruition unless we close the deal.
Actually issue the bonds, yep. Okay. Trustees, further questions? What's your recommendation for us, Christy?
So the recommendation is a motion to authorize staff to pursue refunding of the Series 2014A revenue bonds previously issued by the SUA to fund the construction of the Stillwater Energy Center.
Trustees?
Motion to accept staff recommendations?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this to staff to proceed. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 4-0. Appreciate you, Christy, for looking into ways to get some of that money back. Thanks.
Yes.
That is the end of the agenda unless there's a report from the officers or board. Is there a motion to adjourn the SUA?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We motion a second to adjourn. Please vote. The vote of 4-0, the Stillwater Utilities Authority is now adjourned. At this time, I'll reconvene the Stillwater City Council meeting at item 13, which is an executive session. Is there a motion to enter executive session for the purposes requested by the acting city attorney?
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, we will now enter executive session.
Nope, I don't think so.